Welcome to this edition of the Talking Points. It's Thursday, the 6th, the 4th of June. And the talking point today is power. The government has reissued a softer draft for the amendments to the Electricity Act draft of 2018, one of the two key reforms expected to be unleashed in the current year to revive the DISCOM health. The stimulus package also had two key beneficiaries, which is MSMEs and the power sector, essentially, because of the dole-outs too, or the handouts or the monies that are being lent to the DISCOMs. Now, the talking point today, of course, is that have things changed constructively for the power sector, or is it a short-lived intervention-led euphoria that we are seeing? The key questions: is demand showing any signs of a pickup? Is the sector poised for a change after years of consolidation, both on the stock markets front as well as on the capacities front, maybe, except for the larger players? Are catalysts strong enough to change the narrative on the sector? And also, is the booster package that came out, is that looking different than the ones that have come in the past? I think all of these things would be important to get thoughts from. And who better than Mr. Praveer Sinha to put all of this into perspective? Mr. Sinha, so good having you. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us at BloombergQuint on the talking point today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to always come and speak on your show. And the questions that you have raised are very important questions. But let me just step back and put a perspective to the whole power sector. Typically, the power sector has three dimensions. One is the generation, which we are doing very good. We have nearly 370 gigawatt of generation capacity and nearly 80 gigawatt of renewables. The second is the transmission. We have huge transmission line, which is right across this country, and this is unique, one grid cutting across the whole country, which is very, very unique. And the third is the distribution sector. Now, distribution sector, primarily excepting for the 5 major cities, and now, of course, few more cities are getting added, is with the government sector. The 5 cities.
Mr. Sinha,
consisting of Bhubaneswar, Cuttack, Puri, Paradeep, and Tenkanal. So, other than that, all of them are in a very different pedestal. And that is where the real challenge is. Because at the end of the day, the money comes from the consumers, and the consumer connect is with the distribution companies. And until and unless there is a big reform in the distribution sector, because what we see in the existing distribution sector is that they have high AT&C losses, which means high aggregate technical and commercial losses. Commercial losses means there is theft of electricity, the billing is not done properly, the collection is not done, collection efficiency is low, and that is why they have a very high aggregate technical and commercial losses. Since they continue to make losses, they do not have money to upgrade the technology, upgrade the network, upgrade the people and the capacity building that is not taking place. And that is why today the distribution sector continues to struggle. Along with that, there are certain other challenges in the distribution sector. One is the tariff revision does not take place on time. Many states, the tariff revision takes place once in few years, once in 2-3 years. In some states, it has not happened for last 5 years or 7 years. And that is why the tariff which is being charged to the consumers is not cost reflective. The third challenge is that there is a huge amount of subsidy that has to be paid by the government to the distribution companies, typically for the subsidized power supply which is given to the agriculture sector or to the domestic sector. And because of that reason, there is a huge cross-subsidization that takes place, and our industrial and commercial consumers end up bearing the brunt by their tariffs becoming very, very high. And they, in that way, are not able to be competitive in the global market. So these are the basic challenges that are grappling the distribution sector. And the new tariff policy which is proposed by the government, as well as the Electricity Act amendment proposed by the government, is trying to tackle these things. And how are they trying to do this? First is the enabling provision is being provided in the Electricity Act amendment, whereby you are defining a franchisee and also a distribution
Sure.
sub-licensee. And the objective is that private sector or other players can come in, and they can be multiple franchisees and multiple distribution sub-licensees who can come and deliver quality service and bring in technology. The second aspect is that they,
Mr. Sinha, Mr.
yeah,
Sinha, Mr. Sinha, can I request, because it's such a complex subject, but so spread out in your mind, for you, it's easy. Can I request that we will tackle each of these one by one to understand the efficacy and the possibilities? Is that okay with you?
sure enough, absolutely right,
Super.
absolutely.
Okay. I would also request you, sir, that if you can just speak a bit louder. I'm finding it a little bit difficult to understand. So just a bit louder than what you normally do. That'll be perfect then.
Okay, sure enough.
Okay, great.
I'll try to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, let's start off with one piece one by one. I'll come to each of these topics and get your thoughts, sir. Firstly,
Yes.
let's come to the near-term thing that has happened. The relief that was given in the package that the government announced. Now, would you reckon that it is slightly different than what has been done in the past? Could it be more effective? Because I believe it's happening in two tranches and it's subject to certain conditions. Is it different? Is it effective? Could more have been done?
I think the 90,000 crores that the government is giving is only a short-term relief that is being provided. I don't think it has any structural impact as such. This is primarily because last many months, many of the state discoms have not been able to pay for the power that they procure from generating companies and also to the transmission companies. And the objective is that if they do not pay to the generating companies with summer approaching, many of these generating companies may not be in a position to operate their plants because the generating companies have to buy coal, and for which they need to pay upfront payment. They need to transport coal through railways, where again upfront payment has to be given. So it is a question of survival. And I think the immediate task that the government of India thought is that how do we they provide relief to the state discoms and provide liquidity, and this money will be paid exclusively. In fact, the arrangement is, though the loan is with the state discoms, the money will be paid directly by PFC or REC to this to the generating companies and the transmission companies. So this is more of a short-term solution, and I don't think it has a structural dimension which the government of India would like to bring through the tariff policy and the Electricity Act amendment.
But you reckon, Mr. Sinha, that there will be some structural changes done so that the sector does not need such bailouts now and again, right? I believe you believe some changes need to be made on a structural basis so that this problem can be alleviated once and for all.
Yes, and that is why the amendment to the tariff policy and the amendment to the Electricity Act is fundamental to that. And
Mhm.
until unless that change does not happen and those structural or directional change does not take place, we will continue to have this problem every few months or every year. And hence, it is very, very necessary to look at the whole thing in totality rather than looking at
Got
them
it.
as piecemeal solutions.
Okay. So would you be able to tell us, sir, you started saying that, but let's kind of concentrate. What are the one or two practical things that you believe should be amended in the Electricity Act or otherwise, or the tariff policy, in order to bring about the much necessary change on the ground?
I think there are three or four important issues. The
Okay.
first, enabling provision that they will allow franchisee and distribution sub-licensee, and the future payouts that will happen from Government of India to the states, like the earlier RAPDRP or IPDS, or will be linked to the reforms that they carry out in terms of creating some distribution licensee or franchisee. So that will be linked to that. And if they do not do it, they will not get the money from the government under the new program or new scheme they are bringing in. The second is that they are suggesting that the direct benefit transfer will take place. That means the subsidy which is there from the government will be paid directly to the consumers to whom the benefit has to be given. So the beneficiaries will get the payment directly. Otherwise, what used to happen that while the government would say, the state government would say that I will give the subsidy, they would not pay on a monthly or quarterly basis in advance to the discoms, and to that extent the discoms used to have a challenge in liquidity because they being part of the government they could not enforce this. The Electricity Act provides that provision that that money needs to be paid directly to the beneficiaries, and there has to be no routing of this money through the state discoms. So this is the second big thing. The third is, while last year the Ministry of Power and MNRE, both of them passed order saying that the scheduling of power by the SLDC will be done only after escrow is opened by them to ensure that the discoms pay to the generating and transmission company. Many of the states have not followed it. This needs the push of a law or the power of a law, and this is being included in the Electricity Act amendment. So I think these are the three big things. There are two more things which are very different, and hopefully they will bring structural changes. One is creating of an electricity contract enforcement authority, and there will be a retired judge of the High Court who will be doing this. So many a times the contracts, the PPAs are opened, payments are not made. So anything which is relating to the contract, to the PPA, which is not being adhered to, will directly go to the Electricity Contract Enforcement Authority, and they will be judicial officers, there will be judges, retired judges who will be part of this, and they will enforce the contract so that the payments and other commercial obligations which are there can be enforced. And the other thing that has been done is also the selection process and appointment of the regulatory commission in the states is getting modified, whereby there will be a much larger bench or a much larger selection committee consisting of a judge of the Supreme Court, so that it becomes more objective, and the whole appointment process becomes more in a transparent way, and people who understand the subject are brought into the state regulatory commissions, and they in turn will ensure that tariffs are passed on merit, tariffs are passed timely, the tariffs become cost reflective, cross subsidies removed. So while the Act provides many of these things, even the earlier Act provides many of these things, somehow the enforcement of it has not been very strong.
Yeah.
I hope that the new methodology of appointments will bring in better transparency and better merit in the people who are appointed in the state regulatory commissions.
Realistically, Mr. Sinha, by when do you expect some of these changes to actually take place?
See, there are two documents which are under discussion. One is the tariff policy. I am told the tariff policy, the group of ministers have approved it. It should happen in next 2-3 weeks. I would be very surprised if it gets delayed beyond June. Definitely, I expect in June it will happen. As far the Electricity Act amendment is concerned, the Ministry of Power has circulated the draft for comments. And I'm told that the comments have to come within next 1 week. They had given more than 1.5 months time for the comments. And I do understand that they have all intentions to take it to the monsoon session of Parliament. And if everything goes well, it should get cleared in next 2-3 months. But I think what is important is that there is a firm commitment from Government of India about the reform. And this, they are walking the talk by taking the first step of saying that we will privatize the 8 union territories discoms. So the 8 union territories starting from J&K to Chandigarh to Puducherry to Daman and Diu, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, they are putting that on the block, and they have intentions that within this financial year they will privatize that. I am sure once they do this and the good results are seen by people in the states, uh, the governments in the states will also take the bold step of going for reforms and privatization, whether it is through a franchisee route or distributions of licensee or public-private partnership as it is done in Delhi and now in Odisha. So I think
Got it.
directionally going in the right direction. The speed has to come. I'm sure that the government is very, very committed because this sort of bailout package cannot keep on happening every year
Yeah.
or every 2 years. And until and unless the big ticket reforms does not take place, it would be very difficult for power sector to sustain in the long term.
Do you think the market believes that things are changing in the long term fundamentally? There is a bit of a, you know, in the fund management community, Mr. Sinha, certain quarters believe that what happened to telecom, wherein a very important sector was realized that it was getting burdened down by a lot of silly policy things, and eventually got some necessarily see push in order to make the sector a lot more viable. The same thing could be happening in power. Do you reckon the market believes that? Because frankly, along with the equity markets moving up, the sentiment around the power stocks, your stock as well, has changed quite dramatically in the last 15-20 days.
See, now there is a huge difference between telecom and power.
Of course, of
Power,
course.
power is a public utility. It is a public service, and this has to be given to everyone, whoever is there, rich, poor, people staying in slums, cities, villages, everywhere. So the reform in power and in water will be the most difficult reform that will happen
Okay,
in this country as also anywhere else in the world. So we need to look at it in a little calibrated manner. But
got it.
what I definitely see is that the big ticket reforms in power sectors have all happened. The opening up of generation today, you don't need a license for generation. Way back in 90s, before it opened up, people required license and no one was allowed to set up a plant in the private sector. Similarly, transmission has opened up. Distribution is the little difficult part because it is a concurrent subject. The states have to come on board, and that is why this is taking so much of time. But I can tell you that in my discussions, government of India is very keen on it. Some of the states have taken the bold step. Odisha, for example, has taken. They have already done the privatization of CESU. They are already in the process of doing the privatization of the other three discoms in the state, the north, south, and the west, and which I think in this financial year they will complete it. So I do see green shoots of privatization, of reforms happening in the states. I'm told
Got
UP,
it.
Jharkhand, many of the states in the Hindi heartland are talking about it. And the writing is on the wall that if you do not change it, and the new laws which are coming, the tariff policy which says that you have to give 24/7 electricity, otherwise there will be penalty, service level agreements have to be there. I don't think this sector can afford to delay any of these changes that are going to happen.
Let me ask you one before I move to Tata Power, Mr. Sinha. Just one quick thing. As the MD, or let's say as the person in charge of Tata Power, you are probably the best analyst out there on the company, right? I mean, loosely speaking, what would excite you the most? That one thing that would excite you the most as a shareholder in the proposed policy changes. What is that one key thing?
I think, like any other business, the power business also needs to be opened up, and there have to be multiple players because the competition brings the best for the consumer. At the end of the day, whatever we are doing, the consumer should benefit. So I always keep on saying that power sector has been a monopolistic business, and from monopoly, it needs to get into an open market, and that will only happen if it is opened up and there are no restrictions in it. So multiple players should be there, multiple licenses should be there, and get the best out of all the people, whether they are Indian players or global players. so that the service to the consumer is better, the cost of power reduces, and it becomes as
But
competitive as it
but
is.
that's for the consumer, Mr. Sinha. What about the business? What do you think will make the business really flourish?
I think the competition will give the business. If suppose today the 28 states and the 8 union territories open up, you can imagine the type of opportunity we will have. It will be
Okay.
phenomenal opportunity for us to go to so many states and carry out these reforms, and not only improve our business but also improve the quality of service that we provide to the consumer.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm sure with the electricity bill, if you get tickets for two tickets for movie or restaurant, of course nowadays you might not like to go, but otherwise, I'm sure you would enjoy that sort of thing. So that's where I think the service quality will improve, and I'm sure this will happen sooner than later.
Okay, just one quick thing, Mr. Sinha. This slight confusion, if you will, on this regulated utility ROE, and that comment that came in that maybe NTPC or one of the players might have to forego it for the lockdown period. Any thoughts there? Because I thought CERC upheld the sanctity of the contracts as well. Have you? I mean, what are your thoughts here?
I think this was more of an advisory to NTPC and NHPC. After all, these are all listed companies and they have their own boards, and the boards have to decide what is good for them. The advisory was not that you have to forego your return on equity, but what was happening that due to less consumption of electricity by the state discoms, there was a lot of power which was not getting scheduled. So whatever was the unscheduled power, they were saying that you should not charge the fixed cost, or you should give a rebate on that. So that's what I think was more as a support that was being given by the
Okay.
government of India for and advising NTPC and some of the other public sector transmission and generation companies. But I think it's more for the short term COVID period and more for the unscheduled power.
Okay, you don't think it really sets up a precedent. Okay, let's talk about Tata Power, Mr. Sinha. I mean, so much can be done, and I would love your thoughts on how do you think business is progressing. But I just want to first start off with the big elephant in the room. Almost every report that I read, Mr. Sinha, in the last 1.5 to 2 months speaks about, amongst other things, debt reduction on your part as being the single biggest catalyst for the business, for the stock, for the company. Can you throw some light here? Because various assumptions about what you have done, what you will do, what your debt equity could look like about 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line. Can you speak about this?
Yeah, now let me say that first of all, Tata Power on its own, the various businesses, whether it is in generation, transmission, distribution, or trading, has been doing very well. We have no challenge as far as the businesses are there. And during the COVID period also, all our plants have been operating. In fact, yesterday we were expecting the cyclone in Mumbai, and all our plants and network were fully operational, and we had taken all precautions to see that in case there is any outage, how to attend it quickly. So that's as far as the company operations are concerned. Tata Power has two challenges. First is it is heavily leveraged. We have a huge debt on our books. And the second is we have Mundra. So let me first address the leverage part of it. We had about 48,000 crores about 2 years back. We brought it down to about 43,000 crores. Our debt equity ratio, which was more than 3.1, we have now brought it down to less than 2. It's 1.99 as of 31st March 2020. We have plans to
Uh, I think we've just lost that feed with Mr. Sinha. We'll try and repatch. Sorry, Mr. Sinha, we lost you a bit. If you are with us now, I would just,
yeah,
Mr. Sinha,
we
Mr.
have
Sinha,
plans to deleverage.
yeah,
And
please, yeah, continue.
is it there or
Yeah, it is there now. I lost you in between.
I'm
If you
not
can
able
just
to hear
start with the
you?
deleveraging plan. We heard you until then. we are losing Mr. Sinha. We'll just try and repatch that line
Yeah.
once a minute. Okay, Mr. Sinha, I think we have you.
Is it okay?
This is
Yeah.
okay now.
Okay.
I
So
had you for the first
let,
answer. Can you talk about the deleveraging part, sir?
yeah. So let me talk about the deleverage. As far as the deleverage is concerned, we have been working on the deleveraging for last 2 years. We sold off the Panaton, the Tata Communication, the uh, defense business. We have taken steps to sell off and divest from some of the other investments that we have outside the country because we wanted to consolidate within India. And what we have done is that we have taken steps towards this. Even during COVID condition, on 1st of April, we got the money for the sale that we did in South Africa. Even during COVID conditions, we are in the final stage of uh, finalizing the agreement for the shipping business, and hopefully within June we will get the money. We are also in discussions to finalize the Zambian hydro plant and the coal company in Indonesia, the smaller coal company BSSR. So we have taken all steps. Uh, the only thing I want to mention is that as a listed company, we have very strong governance norms. All the divestments have to be done through a proper process and to get competition in this process. Secondly,
Hmm. These are important answers.
done. Yeah.
Sorry, sir, just lost you, but yeah, please continue. I think I'm hitting a bit of a black. We'll try it one more time if we can, because these are all very important things to understand from Mr. Praveer Sinha. So viewers, just bear with us because of this connectivity thing. But all of these are important. I'm sure you and I, at least I don't mind having this bit of an interruption in between if we get a larger picture seen from Mr. Sinha. But I'm just waiting for that. By the way, let me just surprise you in between on what people are or what companies are saying or what brokerages are saying about this. So HSBC, for example, when they've given up their note on Tata Power, they believe that the net debt to equity will be down to less than 2 times from 3.8 in the past 12 quarters, already down. And the sale, the monetization of ITPC and Georgia should be easier. And the biggest deleveraging likely will be driven by the separation of the renewable assets. Sorry, Mr. Sinha, we lost you a bit, but if you're back with us, and I think you are, if you can just continue with your answer, sir. Mr. Sinha, can you hear me? Okay, I think we have him. It's just my producers, they'll just try and connect this line with Mr. Sinha and then try and get that piece of the answer before we wrap up the interview. But it's important, and therefore we'll just make do with a little bit of a nickel. But as I was saying, there are two things. One, uh, brokerages believe that monetization of ITPC and the Georgia asset should be easier because there is a reversal of provision on ITPC and authorization of the Georgia asset, which indicates that the monetization will be easier. And given falling global yields amidst the strong performance of renewable assets during COVID-19, can Tata Power create a platform or an InvIT out of the renewable assets? And if that renewable asset gets split up of sorts, can that also drive a bit of deleveraging? I think that's the question that we want to understand from Mr. Sinha, because these are two important things from the deleveraging piece. We'll just try and get him on air and try and get this final piece about Tata Power as well. But the remarkable thing is that post this announcement that came in from the finance minister about the money being given to discoms, the 90,000 crore bailout, the sentiment around some of these names, at least the good ones, has changed. Tata Power was at 30. The last I checked, it was circa 38, 39 or thereabouts, about a 30% rise. Not all companies have done that. I mean, Adani Power has had this um, delisting trigger, and that led to the stock moving up a bit, but it's cooled off. Torrent Power has cooled off. So I think the what institutional investors consider to be the best name, which is Tata Power, has certainly gained from the levels that it was at to now, wherever it would be. The key of this interview was to try and figure out if the situation has changed so much that people could actually take a constructive call around a sector which is, well, arguably the most important sectors in the country, but somehow doesn't quite get the equity valuation because a lot of baggages surrounding that sector as well. So that's the whole idea. If we can get Mr. Sinha in the next 1 minute, we should try and see if we can get just that final piece of deleveraging answer going on the two most important things essentially. One of them was, of course, the defense business, and I mean, the monetization of ITPC in Georgia, and the other one is the separation of the renewable assets. Well, I guess we are having some issues with this. What we'll try and do is, viewers, that while you have heard this interview, we'll put up a story around this on our website by today evening, by Thursday evening or Friday morning, and that will give an idea of what Mr. Sinha wanted to say when it comes to the renewable piece as well. So, unfortunately, didn't quite end as well as it started, but hey, sometimes it happens. Thanks so much, though, for tuning into this edition of The Talking Point.